1975, he was in Chicago again. So again, we went to Chicago, but this time he stayed in one Grihastha's apartment. And I came to find out years later it was my friend Srila Prabhupada, who's now passed away. And so they announced one morning, we need some cleaning crew for Prabhupada's apartment. My hand went right up. And so there were 5 of us devotees that would go over every morning and clean Srila Prabhupada's apartment. And Upendra Prabhu was the servant at the time, and Brahmananda was the secretary. And so we would get a garland. I don't remember how we got the garland, but somehow we were given a garland, and I always was able to secure that garland. And for 5 days, we went over in the morning to Prabhupada's apartment, and Prabhupada would come down from the 2nd floor, and the apartment building is one of those kind that had the glass at the halfway point of the stairs, and then we could see him coming, so we'd offer our obeisances, and then when he came out the door, I'd put a garland on him. So I got to do that for 4 mornings in a row. And the 5th morning, my god brother Bhima Das got that service. And it was just so ecstatic. And one really vivid memory was it had rained the night before. And the ground was a little wet. It was just a very, very light drizzle, if any, that morning. And Prabhupada came out, we put the garland on him, and then we offered obeisances. And he stopped us. He said, no. He said, if you do this in the rain, then you'll become sick and your service to Krishna will be hampered. And that made such an impact on me that here he was the spiritual master of the entire universe, but he was more concerned about our health and our well-being. I thought that was just so wonderful. The reporter came from one of the Chicago papers to do an interview for no, it wasn't a paper, it was a television station, to do the interview. I think that was the famous, controversy with the women's lib interview. I don't remember which, I wasn't there for that part. But that night, Prabhupada had darshan in his room, and Upendra was very kind to me and let me get in on all these things. And so I was sitting in the room there with a handful of devotees, maybe a dozen or so, and Prabhupada was having darshan, and so then everything finished and the devotees were leaving. And Upendra and Brahmananda and Pradyumna was there as his translator. And Upendra kind of gave me one of these motions. Wait, don't go. So I kind of slipped to the back of the room. And then all the devotees left, and Brahmananda brought in a television set. And he set it up because Prabhupada was going to be on the evening news. Now, nowadays the evening news is at 11 o'clock, so I'm sure that wasn't the case then. Maybe it was 9 o'clock or something. So they put on the television. Brahmananda sat down. Pradyumna was there. Upendra was there. I was there. There may have been others, but I was not noticing anything except the fact that I was sitting up late watching TV with Srila Prabhupada. And so the first news article came on, and it was about a teacher's strike that was going on in Chicago at the time. And Brahmananda Prabhu, having been a teacher, spoke up. He explained to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, this is about an article. The teachers in Chicago are striking because, and at that point Prabhupada cut him off and said, because they're nonsense and do not know how to teach. I thought that was really far out. And then as the news thing would go on, Brahmananda would give some explanation to Prabhupada and all like that. So finally Prabhupada came on and he watched it, very pleasant. You could see he was smiling. He was very happy with it. And then that was done and we all left. And so that was like, wow, I get this really personal time like that. I just really loved it. One night there was a darshan with one musician. I never got the understanding whether this was a person coming to Krishna consciousness or whether this was already a devotee. I always thought it was someone coming to Krishna consciousness that wanted to use their Western rock and roll guitar style in service to Lord Chaitanya. And Prabhupada was very adamant. And the guy kept bringing the point up 2 or 3 times. And finally Prabhupada said, no. And he pointed, there was this beautiful picture of the Panchatattva on the wall of his room. He said, you see, Mahaprabhu, cartels and mridanga. That is all. So there was that. Prabhupada would take the darshan and then he would come for Charnamrita. And I got the opportunity to be the one with the chandan and put it on his forehead after he took his Charnamrita. And I just here again, it was just a simple little service, but it was one personal thing I got to do for Srila Prabhupada. And then we went down to the Vyasa-san, and I remember the first day, it was like everybody kind of stood around and said, well, somebody lead a kirtan. Now in St. Louis, I was a kirtan leader. I had a decent voice or whatever, and I knew the song, so I would lead a lot of the kirtans. we shared it around, but it was what I did there. So I thought, well, I'll lead the kirtan for Prabhupada. And Pusta Krishna turned to me and said, no, you won't. I will. I'm the sannyasi. So I felt all right anyway. The next day, a similar thing happened. Prabhupada came and he took the Charnamrita and got the chana, and then I rushed down to offer arti to Srila Prabhupada. And as I got to just about to step on the little grass asana that we had, my godbrother, Chaturatma Prabhu, slipped right in front of me. Now, Prabhupada's sitting right there. How much of a scene can you make? So I said to Srila Prabhupada, I said to Panchatattva in his ear, out of the side of my mouth, Panchatattva, what are you doing? I've been waiting all week to do this. He turned to me and with complete confidence said, well, then I've got you beat. I've been waiting my whole life. And I had to succeed, Years later, 20-something years later, I came in contact with Panchatattva, and I relayed that story to him. And with great embarrassment, he felt so bad and just so embarrassed about the whole thing. And I said, no, Prabhu, no. I said, I have used that story for years as an example of your superior thinking to mine. It's a well-known fact that in St. Louis at that time, we were a little crazy about Lord Nityananda's Lotus Feet, the Nitaipada Club and the Lotus Feet Club, and all that history is documented in other places, how some people thought we were a little crazy and off the wall, but most people realized we were just devoted. So anyway, that was at a time in ISKCON where everybody was laminating everything. So I had this laminated picture, it was probably about a 3x5 card, a picture of Nityananda's Lotus Feet. And then I had press-on letters that I had put on it that said, are you ready for millions of moons? Which, of course, is the translation to Narottam Das Thakur's first line of his song in praise of Lord Nityananda. And so I had this big thing hanging off of my bead bag. And I never knew this at the time, but some years later, my godbrother Bhima Das told me about this. I was on one side of the Vyasasan dancing, and my godbrother Bhima Das was standing on the other side, and he was watching the whole exchange and told me about this. He said, I was dancing, and this was on my bead bag around my neck, and he said he saw Prabhupada's eye catch something. And then he watched, and he said he saw that it was in the direction that I was standing. He said, and then he saw Prabhupada lean forward a little bit and squint, and then smile and sit back like that. Now, I never noticed that, but he told me the story, and he said, so he understood then that Prabhupada approved. Prabhupada thought it was nice. We were trying to seek the shelter of Lord Nityananda. One event that really stuck out in my mind with Srila Prabhupada during that Rathayatra parade was when the carts got to Washington Square Park. It was about 4 blocks out, and Subhadra's cart was stopped for some time. And Prabhupada was curious. He became concerned with, so he said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, go and find out. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj got down and went and inquired from whoever. It was gone for some period of time. And he came back and he got it. Because I was fanning Prabhupada, I was close enough I could hear these exchanges. And he said to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, the problem is that so many people have showed up for the festival, they don't have anywhere to put the carts. And Prabhupada here again, he leaned back and he smiled and shook his head very much. And I just thought that this was what Prabhupada wanted. Fifth Avenue, most important city in the world, New York, Rathayatra, so many people had turned out. You could just see Prabhupada was so pleased by this. And I just remember thinking that, years later as the Rathayatras would be done, this was what Prabhupada wanted. That's why he was so happy that, all right, there's no room for the carts because so many people have come out for the Rathayatra. It's like that. Srila Prabhupada again until just a month before his departure in Vrindavan. And I think any devotee that was there at the time can attest to the fact that the Srila Prabhupada we saw then, I think any devotee can attest to the fact that the Srila Prabhupada we saw in Vrindavan then was not the Srila Prabhupada we knew. The last time I saw Srila Prabhupada was this robust, full-bodied. And then when he came to Vrindavan, it was in his final 8 weeks on the planet, and he was completely withdrawn. And it was really a shock to me. But the thing that really stuck with me was that during that time, because I was a pujari for the deities at that time, I was assisting with Krishna Balaram Noon Arti. And they would bring Prabhupada out, and Prabhupada still wanted to come for darshan of the deities. He was still able to be brought out at that time. And the devotees would dance, and Prabhupada took such great pleasure in that. And to me, that was a real lesson that, like Prabhupada said many times, don't think this won't happen to you. But as it was happening, he was still relishing devotional service, coming and seeing the deities, hearing the kirtans, seeing his disciples dance. These were things that were important to him. Circumambulating the deities, they would take him around in the chair like that. After that, shortly thereafter, two things happened. One, personally for me, I caught malaria and I didn't get out of the room I think I had malaria for a week or two really badly. And then when I did recover from that, by that time Prabhupada was completely bedridden. And I didn't get any opportunities to see him, except that one morning I was called in for doing the quiet kirtan. Hamsadutta Prabhu was leading at the time. And here was Prabhupada laid out, but still he was speaking the Bhagavatam, giving instructions. And we've all seen these tapes, which are just, heart-wrenching when you see them. But here's Prabhupada preparing to leave this planet, but still preaching to us, still giving it to us, still knowing it's what we needed and had to have in his example as an acharya, and teaching us that don't just lay there and die and, you're drugged up or whatever. Grasp onto Krishna and give Krishna. And this is what he was doing all the way to the end. Unfortunately, I didn't have the mature hindsight to stay. I left Vrindavan at that time, went back to America before Prabhupada departed. But, that was my little bit of realization from being there close to Prabhupada's Zen, that, just hold on to Krishna even at the very end. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu